It's a new day dawning. The time is at hand where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. And let the King of Glory in. Open the door. Open the door. Open the door. And let the King of Glory in.
All right. Open up the door. Starts right now. So fling wide, you heavenly gates. Prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ. And he heard a sound behind me. He said, behold, I looked. There was a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good afternoon, everybody. Andy White here. What you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. And I want to welcome everybody from all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Thanks for tuning in to a brand new edition of Open Up the Doors. And I am streaming live on my Facebook page over at facebook.com. Yes, it's facebook.com/faithfm 91.7. Join in the conversation over there. Please let me know where you're watching from, where you're listening from. As the broadcast progresses, I will try and keep an eye on my common stream and try and interact with you guys. Please get a conversation going on over there on Facebook Live and share the stream into your streams. Invite people to open up the doors. And we've got some interesting things going on here. We're right down to the wire here. We had some technical difficulties, and we're just the broadcast must go on, and we're going to try and work through some of these things as we go on. But if you'd like to, if you're outside of the Faith FM broadcast area here on the east end of Long Island, you can stream it at hamptonschristian.com over your computer, over your laptop, or download the Faith FM app. We have the app for the iTunes platform. We have the app for the Apple platform. We have the app for the Android platform. You can get that at Google Play and, of course, the Apple App Store for whatever device you have. So, again, thanks everybody who's on Facebook Live. I see there's a bunch of people already on. And like I said, please share this broadcast. I got some important things I'd like to share with you today, and join in the conversation as you are able to. Well, I want to begin with this. You know, most of us probably remember this back in the day when we were children in school. When I was a little boy attending grade school, we began each day, as many of you know, I'm sure, and remember. I don't know if they still do it these days, but I'm in my 60s, and back in the day, school was quite different. But we began each day of the school day with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Note that it's a republic. It's not a raw democracy. It wasn't meant to be an autocratic plutocracy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we as patriotic citizens, we were pledging allegiance to a nation that had a Judeo-Christian foundation, a nation under God. We understood what our moral underpinnings were. A nation, we had a nation that had a constitution, and we still do, believe it or not. But we had a nation that had a constitution that was drafted and forged upon a worldview that knew and understood that our rights come from God and not from man. Our rights do not come from man. Our rights do not come from the government. And our founding fathers knew this. They understood this. And we pledge allegiance to a nation that is a constitutional republic that was founded upon the laws of nature and of nature's God. These things I've talked about many times through the years here on Open Up the Doors. A nation that was founded upon the laws of nature and nature's God. That's a high and noble ideal for a nation. Outside of the nation of Israel that was founded by God and given the laws of their civil laws given by God directly. No other nation in the world has ever founded themselves upon those high and noble ideals of the laws of nature. And it was an allegiance worth pledging. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance, and I still do, to America, to its ideals, to the things it was founded upon. But I will not pledge allegiance to NewMerica. What is NewMerica? Someone asks. I know someone was going to ask that, of course. What is NewMerica? What are you talking about? NewMerica is what I'm naming this new emerging tin pot despot autocracy that we are witnessing, which is trying to take ascendancy in these days in which we live. A tin pot despot, that's an old term. It's a term used for dictators in small countries that think they are more important than they are. Autocrats who have an exaggerated sense of their own self-importance. And what do I hear these tin pot despots calling for? What do I hear these autocratic people calling for? There's this so-called new normal paradigm that's being heaved upon us as Americans. I don't know if anyone's noticed this. Something I've been noticing lately, that no one in the media and hardly any of our elected officials are talking about getting back to normal. Oh, they're talking about ending the lockdowns, of course. We can't, this is unsustainable what we're doing. They're talking about slowly reopening the economy. We have to do that. But I'm not hearing anybody talking about getting back to normal, but rather what they're telling us is that there's going to be a quote-unquote new normal. A new normal. Well, from what I'm seeing, my friends, I'm not liking their ideas for this new normal. You know, there is no such thing as a new normal. Something is normal or it isn't. If everyone started walking on their hands, that would not be normal, new or otherwise. Likewise, staying inside, quarantining a healthy population, not just the sick and infected, which is actually the normal thing, but shutting down businesses, social distancing, wearing masks, and to add insult to injury, having government officials advocating for snitching and ratting on your neighbors is not normal here in the United States of America. Now, some of those things might be very normal in these nations where they have tin pot despots. Unless you lived in the former USSR or in modern-day China, snitching on your neighbors is not normal. When I've heard some of these mayors and some of these governors advocating, some states actually put up websites so that you could, snitch on your neighbor if they're having a party in their home and there's more than, a couple of people there. It reminded me back in the 90s, I did 2 trips to the Ukraine right after the Soviet Union collapsed. And one day we were riding on a train, and I had brought over a team from the church, and they we had kids, we had the youth group, And they were kids. We had 14, 15, 16-year-old kids with us. And they were acting like normal American teenage kids. And they were just being bombastic and loud. But I noticed as I was looking around, all of the people on the train, the Ukrainians, and most of them were elderly. Most of them were well, elderly is the best word I could use. And I was watching them, and they all just kind of looked stoically sat there on the train, stoically sat there on the subway, looking straight ahead. But every once in a while I would see them like turn a little bit and watch these crazy American kids. They were fascinated by them, but they didn't show much emotion. And I mentioned that to my host. I was staying with a Ukrainian couple, a pastor and his wife, back for those trips. And I mentioned this thing that I was observing, and I said, you know, Maxime, I was noticing the people on the train. They were like really looking at the kids, but they were trying not to look at the kids. And I could see that they were curious. I could see that they wanted to smile or even laugh, but they were very stoic. They were very stone-faced. And he looked at me and he said, you know why? He said to me, because for 70 years, they lived under the heavy iron fist of communism. And they didn't know who or what to trust. They couldn't trust their own family members. They couldn't trust their own neighbors because you didn't know who was a communist apparatic who was going to rat you out, who was going to snitch on you for doing something that the government didn't want you doing. So the people learned to be very introverted. They learned to be very isolated. They learned to not trust anybody. So when I hear American officials advocating for snitching on your neighbors, that really sets me off because I saw a lot when I went on those trips to the Ukraine. But it is the oppressing and the suppressing of a people. And calling something normal means that's the way it should be. And all of these things that we are experiencing, my friends, the last few months is not the way it should be. If this new normal means abrogating and forfeiting my God-given rights and liberties, then this isn't America. This is NewMerica. And I will not pledge allegiance to NewMerica. Do you see what this contagion is doing to so many of us? The Chinese coronavirus is turning America into China. Welcome to NewMerica, where the Constitution and your God-given rights get trampled underfoot by the fiat of overreaching, power-grabbing governors, where the Constitution gets thrown under the bus and where your rights are given over to the capricious interpretations of public officials who haven't even thought about the Bill of Rights, who haven't even considered the Constitution. Did you see this conversation last week that Tucker Carlson had with New Jersey Governor, what's his name, Phil Murphy? Tucker Carlson pressed New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy on why he allowed arrests at religious services to be part of the coronavirus quarantine enforcement. And Tucker asked Governor Murphy about the arrest of 15 men at the funeral of a rabbi in Ocean County in early April. And Tucker asked the governor, he said this, quote, "The Bill of Rights, as you well know, protects Americans' rights, enshrines their right to practice their religion as they see fit, and to congregate together, to assemble peacefully," Carlson said. By what authority? This was a great question by Tucker to this governor of New Jersey. By what authority did you nullify the Bill of Rights in issuing this order? How do you have the power to do that? Now, the answer the governor made, brothers and sisters, made my head explode. I was watching this in real time when this interview with Governor Murphy was going on. And the answer the governor made blew my mind. It literally had me falling out of my chair and yelling at the TV, something my wife really hates when I do that. By what authority, Tucker said, did you nullify the Bill of Rights in issuing this order? How do you have the power to do that? And here was the governor's answer. That's above my pay grade, Tucker. As soon as he said that, I was like, what? You're the governor. What do you mean it's above your pay grade? You don't understand the Constitution of the United States of America? You don't understand the Bill of Rights? You're the governor. How could you say it's above your pay grade? He goes, this is a quote. I'm not making this up. You can find this on YouTube. The governor said, I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this. Yep. And that is, my friends, precisely the problem. Governors from all across America, mayors of cities, all deciding on their own how to control the people, how to control the citizens of the United States of America. That is where tyranny begins, my friends. Crisis or no crisis. Because make no mistake about it, it's always under the guise. It's always under the mantra of, we're doing this for the good of the people. Every authoritarian, autocrat, dictator in history has always said that. We're doing this for the good of the people. We know what's the best. Now, unfortunately, we now have a nation filled with elected officials in all branches of the government who seemingly don't have a clue. They seemingly have no idea of what the Constitution exists for, nor of what it actually says. A Constitution that was given precisely to curb and limit their power, not the God-given rights of the citizenry. We have now witnessed these past several months state and local governments issuing decrees about what people can and cannot buy in stores. Arrest parents playing with their children in public parks. We've seen people getting yanked off of public buses at random. I'm not making any of this up. Every one of these things has been in the news. We've seen municipalities removing basketball rims along with private property. We've seen churchgoers being ticketed when they go into a drive-in church service. And in one case, we even have video of cops chasing a lone runner down an empty beach who was out for a jog. They never caught him. But why? What is this? All of this we're being told is for our own good. But is it? Really? As one post that I saw very astutely pointed out, I don't very often, let me just read this post because it just really knocked the ball out of the park. It said this: when the state tells you it's safe to go to Home Depot to buy a sponge, but it's dangerous to go and buy garden seeds, it's not about your health. When the state shuts down millions of private businesses, but doesn't lay off a single government employee, it's not about your health. When the state shuts down dentists, and this one really hit home because my wife, she likes to mother me sometimes, but my wife had a dental emergency a few weeks back, and she couldn't go to our regular dentist because they were shut down. She had to call around to find a dentist who would do emergency dental work. Because when the state shuts down dentists because they declare it unsafe, but deems abortion clinics can stay open, it's not about your health. When the state prevents you from buying tomato plants because it's non-essential, but does allow in-person lottery ticket sales, it's not about your health. I saw this happening just the other day when I was in the store picking up my lunch. There was a guy who was just like at the counter, and now they got the plexiglass up on the counter. Now you got to stand 6 feet behind everybody. Fine, I get it. But there was a guy. I'm buying my lunch, and I got to get going. And there's a guy at the counter there buying lottery tickets. And I'm thinking to myself, is that essential? Oh, but I can't buy a tomato plant. I can't go to the stinking nursery down the road and buy a tomato plant. But he can come. I mean, come on, folks. It's not about your health. I understand there's real health issues out there. But something else is going on. When the state tells you it's dangerous to go and play golf all by yourself, which you really can't around here in Long Island because I think they're all shut down anyway. But when the state tells you that you can't fish alone or be in a motorboat alone, but the governor and the mayor can get his stage makeup done and their hair done for 7 TV appearances a week. It's not about your health. It's like the mayor of Chicago. She shut down all the hair cutting places, but she's out there getting her hair done, at a private salon or something. And when it was brought up to her, like, hey, isn't it a little hypocritical? You just shut down all these cosmetic places. You just shut down all these hair places. And she said, well, I'm the mayor of the city. I got to look good. Your hair's not essential. Mine is. Yeah, okay. Come on, folks. The list of examples could go on and on and on of all the absurdities and inconsistencies and the abuses of power that we've all witnessed these past couple of months. But you know what? All of that was a little bit of a bunny trail. I need to get back to my discussion with Tucker Carlson and Governor Murphy of New Jersey because Tucker kept pressing the issue. Tucker said to the governor, quote, since you are an elected official, a leader in the government, an executive, how do you have the authority to order something that so clearly contravenes the Bill of Rights of the United States, the U.S. Constitution? Where do you get that authority to do that? Sometimes I don't always agree with Tucker, but I was glad for this interview. He kept hammering it home. Where do you get the authority to contravene the Bill of Rights and the Constitution? And Governor Murphy went on to say, well, we need, you almost stumbled like that too, the way I just did. We know we need to stay away from each other, number one. Okay. Number two, we do have broad authority within the state. Well, let me interject something here right now. There is no broad authority anywhere to suspend the Constitution. And contrary to popular belief, even martial law does not suspend the Constitution of the United States of America. A lot of people think it does, but it doesn't. And number three, we would never do that, the governor said. We would never do that. We would never, contravene. We would never take away people's rights. Listen to this answer. Without coordinating and discussing and hashing it out with a variety of the leaders of the faiths of New Jersey. Yeah, that sounds really reasonable, doesn't it? Oh, well, we discussed it amongst ourselves. We got together with the clergy and discussed how we could supersede their constitutional rights. Folks, that's not how the Constitution works. That's not what the Constitution says or even stipulates. And may I remind everyone here, the U.S. Constitution isn't a litany of nice suggestions used just for favorable times. It's the law of the land for all times, favorable or not, good times and bad times. Even when Abraham Lincoln tried to suspend habeas corpus, he lost. Now, he suspended habeas corpus in the case of this one guy, I can't remember his name. But when he got to the Supreme Court, he lost in that particular case. Murphy, getting back to the 21st century here, Governor Murphy went on to tell Tucker, and it sounded identical to what Mayor de Blasio had said a few weeks earlier. Listen to the statement. This is what Murphy said on national TV. We have to find a different way to worship. But the ever-intrepid Tucker Carlson noted quite correctly, quote, the government's not allowed to tell people how to worship, Governor. Yeah, duh. The government's not allowed to tell people how to worship. You can't just, as the governor of a state, tell people who they can talk to, when, and where, because the Constitution of the United States, upon which all of this is based, prohibits you from doing that. But you clearly decided that you could do it. On what authority? That was a great interview. And the mayor, like I said, his answers were ludicrous. It's above my pay grade. And I'm taking long on this opening block here. But it's just like one police officer down in Mississippi who was caught on video said to the pastor who was conducting drive-in church services, the cop said, "This is an emergency. Your rights have been suspended." No. Hear me, brothers and sisters. Hear me, my fellow Americans. That's not how this works. Wake up and smell the Alinsky. It was Saul Alinsky in a book titled Rules for Radicals, a book that was dedicated to Lucifer, who posited the idea of never letting a good crisis go to waste. People, listen up. What is going on here is far, far more than just a contagious virus. It's not even just a fight for our civil rights. It's not even a fight for the Constitution and country. It's all of those things. But it is a fight against good and evil. I love what this columnist in the Washington Times wrote a column. Her name is Cheryl Chumley. And she said this: coronavirus at its root is being used as a tool for those with devilish designs. This is the Washington Times, a secular newspaper. She said that this crisis is being used as a tool for those with devilish designs to establish a new order, a new un-American, unconstitutional, and unfree kingdom. That is their end game, like it or not. And she said, wake up and smell the Alinsky. NewMerica. NewMerica is the fundamentally changed America that was promised by Barack Obama 12 years ago. And surprise! Now suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, it's now exploding on the scene by way of a sneak attack through the Saul Alinsky tactics of never letting a good crisis go to waste. And that was my opening monologue, and I went very long, but please stick around, folks. I'll be back in a minute. Here's David Crowder with a tune called I Am. I am holding on to you, even in the midst of the storm. We're in a storm, brothers and sisters. We're in a storm.
There's no space that his love can't reach.
But Jesus is in the boat with us.
There's no place where we can't find peace.
Stick around, I'll be right back.
There's no end to amazing grace.
David Crowder, in the middle of the storm, I am holding on to you. Amen and amen. Welcome back, Andy White here. You are listening to Open Up the Doors here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 98.3 in Napeague, and WEGQ 91.7 in Quogue. Overcoming, that's part of the American spirit. It's part of American ingenuity, not only in the spirit, but also that also because it's who God created us to be. I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if you saw this report in the Blaze this past week, the Blaze newspaper. It was great. I found this story so amusing. Last week, the city of San Clemente, California, decided to dump 37 tons of sand, 37 tons of sand on a local skate park where kids like to go, skateboarding. The town just came in and dumped 37 tons of sand on the track so the kids couldn't skateboard. They wanted to prevent the kids from skateboarding during this lockdown. But it didn't last too long. You know what these kids did? Because after a couple of days, the kids were back at the skateboard park. But you know what they were doing? They brought their dirt bikes down. I love this story. The kid said, "Okay, we can't skateboard because of the sand. We're gonna bring our dirt bikes down." I just thought that was great. They just turned a skateboard track, into a dirt bike track. And then once the sand got all kicked off the track from them doing all their wheelies and stuff on their dirt bikes, they all got out and shoveled it off, and they went back to skateboarding. There's video of this. There's videos of this. I thought it was great. But one person on Twitter posted the videos and said this: "LOL, checkmate, government dweebs, turning skate park into a dirt bike track now." Yeah, I just found that amusing. I mean, I know some of you are going to say to me, "Brother Andy, are you advocating rebellion?" No, I just found that story rather amusing. Besides, kids who have been pent up for weeks on end, skateboarding and dirt bike riding while wearing helmets and gloves is hardly rebellion. The orders to shut down the park in the first place is what really needs to be questioned in my estimation. Now listen, I want to be clear, folks. I'm not telling people not to take reasonable precautions. I'm not telling people not to be reasonably safe. But I am questioning, and I have been questioning, the narrative that's closing down the world's economy and restructuring our society for another agenda. These autocrats who want to restructure society and are using this coronavirus crisis as a means to realize their dystopian dreams, and they cannot be allowed to get away with it. They just can't, because this is how government control starts. As someone very succinctly noted, I don't know who said this. I saw this somewhere, and I said, yes, that's a home run. And the quote is this: "Quarantine is when you restrict the movement of sick people. Tyranny is when you restrict the movement of healthy people." And we've been seeing the most draconian measures enforced at all levels of government that we've ever seen in our lifetimes. And yet, rather than being alarmed by the things that are going on, so many of the media pundits applaud with gleeful mindlessness. Businesses, I'll say it again, have been forcibly closed and padlocked, and owners arrested for refusing to shut down. And the elite class applauds. Dairy farmers and other farmers are being incentivized to stop dairy farming and to sell their herds. And people don't seem to understand the implications. You know what I've noticed, folks? Isn't it? A year ago, we were laughing at AOC and the Democratic Socialists and the Democrats who were trying to pawn off this Green New Deal on America, and we were laughing because they wanted to shut down the airline industry. They wanted to stop the selling of beef. They want because cow farts pollute the air, and they went through this whole litany of things that were laughable. Has anyone noticed that they're getting the things that they wanted to? I don't know if this is just some kind of ironic coincidence or not. But something in my gut is telling me that some things here might be very, very connected. Farmers are being incentivized to stop their farming, and you don't understand the implications of that. A child's birthday party is raided by police, and the sheeple applaud. A parade of school teachers and administrators who wanted to drive through the neighborhoods and wave at children is busted up by the cops because they were non-essentially driving, and the sheeple applaud. Again, we can go on and on and on. But something even more serious than all of those things. People are being denied life-saving medical treatments because they're not a priority right now. Not essential. Their life's not essential as deemed by the government. Because the entirety of our medical system is focused on one thing and one thing alone. And we're not supposed to question the narrative. But just this past week, this past Tuesday in the New York Post, New York State just issued a drastic new guideline urging emergency service workers, paramedics, listen to this, not to bother trying to revive anyone without a pulse when they get to the scene because the hospitals are overloaded. While paramedics were previously told to spend up to 20 minutes trying to revive people found in cardiac arrest, the change is, quote, necessary during the COVID-19 response to protect the health and safety of EMS providers by limiting their exposure, conserve resources, and ensure optimal use of equipment to save the greatest number of lives. In other words, if EMS comes to your house and you had a heart attack, they're just going to let you die in the city of New York. Or maybe this was the state. I'm not even sure if it was just a city or the whole state. But the good news is this. Fire responders were outraged over the move. And the head of the EMS here in New York City, I can't say his last name, Oren Barzilay, said this: they're not giving people a second chance to live anymore. Head of the city union, whose members include uniformed EMTs and paramedics. Our job is to bring patients back to life. This guideline takes that away from us, he said. And you know what? I hope to God they disobey that directive. Brother Randy, are you advocating rebellion? Yes. In this case, yes, I am. As Jesus himself said, is it lawful to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? There are times when we must obey God rather than men. And hopefully I'll get into more of that later in the broadcast if I don't run out of time. But this past week I heard at least 3 different governors say in defense of their overreaching orders, if we can save just one life, if we can save just one life, these elected officials are telling us, if we could just save one life, as they tell paramedics not to treat people, if we can save just one life, as they condone and allow for the butchering of babies as they come down the birth canal, if I hear one more pro-abortion, pro-infanticide governor of a state say as they are trampling on our constitutional rights, if we can save just one life, it's worth it. My head is going to explode. Marijuana stores are open, having been deemed essential businesses. Liquor stores are open, having been deemed essential businesses. Abortion clinics are open, having been deemed essential businesses. But the churches have been shut down. And you wonder why? I believe God is judging America. Now, I understand there needs to be a balance to some of these things, folks. We can't be dismissive of the contagion. I get that. But we cannot allow it to enslave us either. The contagion is serious. So don't misunderstand me. But the exploitation of it for power grabbing and the furthering of a statist agenda can't be dismissed either, because both things are happening. It's not just exclusively one or the other. Yes, people are dying, and it's heartbreaking, and we don't dismiss that on any level. But at the same time, the government is also manipulating the stats and the data. And you have to ask the question, why? Have we forgotten that here in America, we elect officials to represent us and to serve us? We don't elect officials in America to rule over us. But alas, I do think that is all but forgotten. We have lamentably devolved from a constitutional republic into an elitist, autocratic plutocracy. And remember, it was only a few weeks back that Congressman James Clyburn told his Democratic caucus members, this is a quote, "This crisis is a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision." Let those words sink in. I got to take a break, folks. Stick around. I'll be right back. Here's Matt Redman. Can a nation be changed?
Can a nation be changed? Can a nation be saved?
fusion of heart, mind, and soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Andy White here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in that peak, WEGQ 91.7 in Quad. Hey, thanks everybody for hanging out with me on this rather chilly late April day here on the east end of Long Island. It's almost like it's more like it's early December than late April. We even had some hail and ice falling out of the sky earlier in the day, just for a little bit of time. But it's been it's been windy and cold here on the east end of Long Island. So those of you who are listening all across the fruited plain in some of those warmer areas like Florida or California or wherever, enjoy your whatever it is, 80s, 70s, 80s weather, because it's still cold here on the east end of Long Island. But we are still forging ahead with the truth, penetrating the darkness with the light of the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thanks for joining in, as I said a moment ago. Hey, listen, if you've never subscribed to my YouTube channel, let me give a plug here for this. I really need for you guys to please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just go on over to YouTube or Google it. Andy White, Open Up the Doors, and you'll find my YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you've never subscribed. Invite other people as well. Got to get the subscriptions up over there for lots of reasons. Lots of good reasons. We want to reach people with the gospel. We want to reach people with the truth. We want to enlarge the tent, enlarge our territory. We want to be a voice. We want to be a voice in the wilderness and a light in the darkness. So please, if you've never subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do that. Well, I've only got a few minutes left. I've been going long on some of those blocks. I actually had to shorten my last block a little bit. So I'm going to backtrack a little before I get into some of my closing thoughts, because there was a really good article, and I don't want to not bring this up, because it really goes into so much of what I've been sharing so far in this broadcast. And what really interested me was that the person who wrote this column in The Hill magazine. Now, The Hill is a nonpartisan. They've got Democrats, they got Republicans, liberals, conservatives who write for The Hill. It's Washington magazine, Washington periodical, whatever you want to call it these days, blog. But the person who wrote this article was a guy by the name of Mark Penn. And when I saw who wrote it, I actually did a double take and make sure it was the same Mark Penn who I thought it was, and it was. Mark Penn used to be an advisor to former President Clinton back in the 90s when Bill Clinton was president. So I know who Mark Penn is. He's a Democratic operative, and he excoriates Nancy Pelosi in this article in The Hill for the other day. I want to just give you some of his quotes, because this is what I've been talking about to some degree today. The title of his article was Speaker Pelosi, End Government by Secret Caucus. And he goes on to write, our Constitution set up 3 branches of government, and yet in this crisis, only 2 branches are fully operational. In particular, the House of Representatives is no longer functioning as a legislative body at all, but as an executive committee run by just one representative, the Speaker of the House. After I read the first paragraph of this, I said to myself, is this the same Mark Penn? Because he's like excoriating, and rightfully so. He goes on to say in this article, there are no open debates, no televised committee hearings, no minority rights. The minority would be the Republicans. So this Democrat operative is sticking up for the minority rights. Now that's what I call an intellectually honest liberal. He understands the Constitution and the balance of powers. And he goes on to say, the people's house is not open to the people. The House of Representatives has stood empty since the beginning of this crisis. And it's a long article. I'm only pulling out a couple of paragraphs. You really need to look this article up and read it, because it's really good. Because he talks about how the Supreme Court has managed to come together through teleconferencing to hear their cases. He talks about how the White House is obviously operating at full steam ahead. And he's saying, where is the House? Oh, here's what he says. The power of the House has been usurped by Speaker Nancy Pelosi and a small group of leaders who decide without public hearings on trillions of dollars of expenditures. There is no regular order and no debate of any kind. One representative, Nancy Pelosi, who was voted on by 1/435th of the nation, effectively yields as much authority as the president of or the collected justices of the Supreme Court. Daily phone calls are held in secret with the Democratic caucus. None of it is public. This is an outrage, and he's calling it out. Because what exactly is it that they are conjuring up as a means to institute their dream of NewMerica? I don't know for sure, but this much I do see. These autocrats may be using this crisis as a means for their agenda. But let me tell you something, folks. So is God. Because God causes all things to work according to the counsel of his will, Ephesians 1:11. God uses all things. So not only are the autocrats using this crisis, not only are the statists and the authoritarians using this crisis, I got news for you, so is God. And he's using it to separate the wheat from the chaff. And he's calling on all, brothers and sisters, he's calling on all to repent. For the great day of God Almighty is coming. And if you think this is bad, just wait, because you ain't seen nothing yet. God is calling for repentance on one and on all. Isaiah said, "Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, and he will have mercy on him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon." Make no mistake about it, my friends. God is using this coronavirus crisis for his agenda. There is another agenda out there, and all the things that have been written must come to pass, as we've so often have talked about. But I'm seeing God's hand move, and I'm seeing a remnant that's going to come forth. Now, I had a whole nother section that I wanted to talk about, but I'm not going to have the time. I wanted to talk about one of the things that has been concerning me lately, that I'm seeing in the church, that so many Christians think and believe that we're obligated and commanded to an unqualified and unmitigated obedience to the governing authorities. And I stressed the idea of an unqualified and unmitigated obedience. But I'm not going to have time. I wanted to get into Romans 13 a little bit. I wanted to get into some of the things about this tension between church and state, and give unto Caesar that which is Caesar, but unto God's that which is God's. But I'm not going to have the time to get into that. But let me just say this way right now, and I'll give it as a little teaser. Maybe I just have to get back to this next week. Caesar does not have authority over the church of the living God, my friends. No matter how many twistings and misapplications and misappropriations of the scripture people want to use, Caesar does not have authority over the church of the living God. And like I said, I'm not going to be able to get into it. I've only got a minute left. But let me say this, just to wrap this broadcast up. I love my country. The one I remember anyway. The one that I pledge allegiance to as a proud and patriotic American. But I will not pledge allegiance to NewMerica. And even after saying all this, my ultimate allegiance ultimately is to another country, a city whose builder and maker is God. That's the promised land that I'm yearning for, because my citizenship is in heaven. I love this passage in Hebrews, speaking of the patriarchs. These all died in faith, not having received the promise, but having seen them afar off or short of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better country. And yes, we desire a better country. That is our heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. A better country. A city prepared for God. That is our future. That is our hope. In the meantime, watch Stand fast in the faith. Be brave, be strong, and let all that you done be done in love. I got to run, folks. I am terribly out of time. I'll be back next week, and I'll have to pick this up again. God bless everybody. Seek the Lord while he may be found.